Hi and welcome to my fifth episode. This is, yes, I have to, these high numbers, it's different to keep count. But this is my fifth episode about the C128. And this time we are going to do a random stack of things. I've been down and collected my personal 128 DCR. I do have one signal that is a bit suspicious that I need to do a comparison of. And I have one, what should I say, other goal with that, and that is when I'm done with the Tommy's machine, I also want to test the floppy circuit. So I'm a bit, I'm a bit worried of destroying things. My 128 DCR, it worked when I put it back in storage. It's 11 years ago since I tested it. So it's been a while, but this is not the worst beast. They tend to work. When I used it last time, it also have been 11 or 12 years since last time, and it works just fine. So I do have high hopes that it works, and if not, nothing is better. This is kind of cruel, but for me, a non-working Commodore is an interesting project. I was about to say that a dead Commodore is a good Commodore, but that is so far from true that it can be. But a dead Commodore is a life to be saved. It's a better expression. So, and we also are going to fix the last fault on Per Vidar's, the other 128 DCR, that we took the memory fault. And here I'm going to show you an alternative way to take out the memory chips. Not everyone will be very pleased with this, but I can assure you this was the way we did it back in the day. I never removed a motherboard to replace a memory chip. So you can leave some comments on that. The repair is nice, is working. It's a very high quality silver plated machined socket that is used. So it's a very good repair, high quality. And that we're going to look into. And we are also making some progress on Tommy's 128 in this episode. So there are going to be some more theory. I have to show you in detail. I have some of you asked that they want to show more of the fault finding on video, but you must kind of have noticed by now. I saw most of the fault finding is up here. I study the schematics, I do some measurements, I do some thinking, and I try to understand the circuit. What is making the circuit behave as it does, and to make that work I have to know the original content of these schematics, and that is actually what's brought me onto the fault that is on Tommy's board. And I had two hypotheses, and both actually kicked in, but more about that later. So I'm going to try to show in detail what I do, but most of this is by understanding the circuits and explaining my understanding of how they work. Of course, I can't get every detail right, and some things I have to simplify, and some things I have to simplify in my mind to get this working. But I hope you follow me on this this approach. First, now we are going to show you what I did with the 128 DCR with the bad memory chip. What I'm showing you now is actually fake. This is my Commodore 128 DCR, and I have no intention at all to cut away this memory. So this is just to illustrate what I did on Per Vidar's C128. And this is the way we did it back in the day. I never removed a motherboard to change memory chip. Not on a 128, not on a C64, and not on a plus 4 either. I always did it this way when we was in a hurry and only get paid for the repair and not our time. And that was we used a sharp kind of scissors, and we just went away and cut these pins, and we tried to cut them as far up as we could, like so, and just removed every piece. And then we just took our soldering iron and a pin tweezer, and we just removed each leg. And this process actually leaves the motherboard with less use of heat than you would otherwise. And when this was a repair that we did under warranty, we never used sockets on memory chips. We always soldered the memory chip straight back in, and then it was no worry if you could put solder on each side or not, because when you put the chip down, it's very easy with a thin soldering iron just to solder this in from this side. It took almost no time at all. We used 5 minutes to repair a C64 with a faulty memory chip, if we was able to know which chip it was. And sometimes we just cut away every one of them and resoldered if we was unsure. But this memory chip on Per Vidars, I actually used the finger diagnosis, and I took the chip that was hottest. And I also checked that this chip was in bank 1 and not bank 0, and that was this chip U40 was the bad one, and that is actually the love bits on the second bank. So this also was the one that we kind of knew was bad after the testing and the conclusion from the second episode. Yes, and I actually lost my footage of the previous operation as I ran out of memory on the memory card. But here I actually have removed all the pins from the holes by using a tweezer and the soldering gun, my soldering iron. And now I'm going to use my desoldering gun to remove the rest of the solder from the holes. And back in the day we used a tin sucker or actually a vacuum pump. But I'm going to clean these pads with some soldering wick afterwards. But now I'm going to show you the sockets I'm actually going to use to put this memory chip in a socket so that it can be replaced later if need be. And this is the real deal. These sockets actually are from 1986 and it's no AliExpress copy, and I'm not sure even if they exist still. And these are individual pins that are fastened into a metal frame, and this frame can be 14 or 16 or 18 or 20 something pins. I have actually run out of anything but the 16 pin frame long ago, and I kind to improvise to use these on all kinds of socket when I need this. And I'm actually starting to run out of this. I maybe have 20 sockets left or something. But these are really good to do these kind of fast repairs. I don't have to remove a motherboard. I don't have to turn it around. And I can do all the work from the top side of the PCB. And these pins are actually very good heat conductors. So they don't heat up the board very much. It's evenly heated, and I can solder and get a very good solder just by applying solder and heating on the top of the board. Of course, if it's not a true plated board, that will be no good idea, but everything in the Commodore world is true plated, and the same about the PC motherboards and stuff. So after I've soldered this, I just remove the frame, and every one of these pins will be sticking out of the PCB, and I just use them as a normal socket. And as these are silver plated, They are very high quality. So I have no fears whatsoever that this will not be a very solid repair. As I only have a holder for 16 pins, and this is an 18 pin socket I have to replace, as this is 14 or 41 464 or 4464 memory chip. I have to do this in 2 takes. So first I cover the first 16 holes, and then I just remove the metal holder, add 2 more pins, place it back in, and solder the last 2 feet. And as you can see, it's very easy to solder between the legs. I just stick the solder in between the legs and heat, and the solder flows very easy. It's a good clean board, it's good solder with a lot of flux, and a good heated soldering iron. So this is very easy work, and this will just stick just fine to the board, and we just have to make sure that every pin is soldered as it should from the top. And then the true plating will carry the tin through the board, and the solder will be good enough also from the bottom of the board. And when the shield is removed and the last 2 pins are soldered, it's just to remove the metallic holder thingy, and just place the chip in the socket really. And these sockets, as they are machined, is not very forgiving if you have bent pins on your IC. So I'm bending this pin a bit to bending the pins on this chip a bit to make sure that they fit in the socket, so it will be a good contact and an easy fit. And hopefully this is the last fault on this board, or this 128 DCR. So we are now about to test this and run through a memory test cycle before we put the lid back on. This is the 785260 version of the memory test, and of course it's not foolproof, that we know, but if it tests okay, at least we know that the fault that this same diagnostic detected last time is gone. And we are going to run this through, but I'm going to speed up the memory test a bit, and I'm also going to listen on the SID part of the test. This screen capture here is done by a new USB screen capture device that I bought with AliExpress, and it's a piece of shit junk. It's very difficult to adjust the colors and the sensitivity of the video signal. So this looks a bit crooked and it's not the best capture. So I probably have to go back just to filming off my screen again. I have to see, but for now I'm going to use this capture probably throughout this video if it works that long. And as you can see, the high ramp bank 1 that tested bad last time, it now goes through with flying colors, but we just have to wait until we have finished all the memory tests. Of course we are going to get something back on the 6526 chips, and that is because we don't have the harness connected. So the keyboard, the cassette drive, the serial port, and the 6526s won't be tested as they should. I'm interested to listen into the sound test of the SID, so I just do this, but this is open mic, so it's not the best sound quality, of course, but I try to turn up the volume a bit here. That didn't sound all too bad, so I do say that the SID chip is okay. So I'm going to put the lid back on this computer, but not until I've also tested the disk drive again, so I'm sure that it works. And to test the disk drive, I'm just going to load the same floppy disk we tested last time. Then I don't introduce any new sources of faults. And last time I just loaded the Gauntlet, some version that was cracked, and see how that works. And here you can see the crappy colors. Now I adjusted it so it kind of worked with the green and blue colors for the diagnostic, and 128, of course the 128 is a bit more light than it should be. It should be a clearer green, but this is just crazy. So this pink hue, I actually adjust this now by adjusting a filter, a chroma filter in Open Broadcaster Studio, so it's no way to adjust this on the device itself or via the controls for the device. There actually are no controls on this driver set for this device, and it's using some standard capturing driver in Windows. And when it comes to the speed of the 1571 drive, there is actually no fast load that can beat the trickery of video editing. So I just skip the whole loading process and say that the game is ready to run. That would have been a thing back in the day. But I don't have a fast load in this. I could of course have incorporated some ready rooms and stuff, but I have not done that. And here I'm just going to listen into the nostalgic tune from Ben Daglish on this game. And actually, due to the capturing device, I only have this in one speaker, so sorry for that. But we can conclude that this 128 DCR is ready for pickup, and I'm just going to put the cover back on and move on to some theory. This is a slide from last time, and this is the memory architecture and the difference in the Costco DCR version, where they are using the 4-bit memory. And there is nothing more to it really. It's the same operation that was done in the C64 with the new memory layout when they did the 466 board and the shortboard versions. But when we took our memory test, there was some confusion, and I actually got some questions about this, because you have here the RAM bank 0, the RAM bank 1, and then you also have the high and low RAM. And someone was asking, but the high RAM and low RAM, does that describe the nibbles that are here? And it actually not. It's of course like so that the high and low memory is addresses. So this is 1 byte, and it's contained in 2 chips, and 1 byte is contained in these 8 chips over here. But what actually states the low memory is the address from 800 to F00. That is defined as the low memory, and we have a huge overlap here, because the high memory goes from 4000 to FE00. And of course the rest of the memory is beneath here. You have memory from address 0 to FFFF. But when you do the banking on the memory management unit, you have to have a window that the memory management unit uses to bridge memory between these chips, as the 0-page memory always has to be visible for a 6502 kind of CPU. So the high bank, low bank, bank 1, bank 0, default bank, upper bank, and so on. I suppose they could have made it more confusing, but I really can't see how. And this of course is the same on this one, high and low. The addresses for the test are the same. But of course here there are 8 chips with each data bit. And that is why you get, when one whole chip is at fault here, you get 4 chips that are bad, instead of pointing to just the chip in the RAM 1 that has the low data bits. That should be this chip. So that is how we diagnosed which chip was bad, and it also got warm, so no reason to do something else. And but our fault finding and what the final test result showed was actually that it was this chip that was bad. A lot of confusion about the high and low memory and RAM 0 and RAM 1 on the 128, but this is the best explanation I can give, at least from a test cartridge point of view. Yeah, now you might think, what is it with this moron? Does he never stop talking? And in this video, sorry, I'm not finished by a long shot. Because we have to go into some details for something that I overlooked when I took my first walkthrough of the schematic and was really important, to get my grasp on when doing fault finding on the Arctic Retro board. So now we leave the 128 DCR that was complete and is now fully working. We leave that, get that ready. It's ready now for pickup. He can come and get it anytime he likes. But there are some work left on Tommy's board, and I do think I have found one fault, but how I found it, I need some more thorough explanation of how the address buses on the 128 works. So, sorry folks, but here is more theory for you. We started this series by giving an overview of the block diagram of the C128 system, and this actually got me stuck. Normally a block diagram describes quite good and gives a good overview of the system, but as I said, there was a lot of trickery on the address bus, because you have the translated, you have the shared, you have the multiplexed. You have over here the shared that is connected to the translated bus. You have a multiplexer here that makes the multiplexed address bus, and you have the VIC chip, and so on. And also you have some shared confusion and naming on the cartridge port of these buses. And this got me tricked, and the trickery was down here where you said that this was buffered. And I was thinking a buffer is normally something you do to enhance the signal, or maybe switch out the signal or something. But this is actually not a unified thing here, and that got me a bit confused. And there also should be some more arrows here to point out how this should go. So this address bus that goes into the MMU, it should have been pointing this way, and there should have been an arrow over here for this bus, and I will show you why. You have this U42 that actually I thought was the buffer that was down here, and it was just a buffer. And since this was latched high, I didn't see this line here, because what this means is when you get a DMA transfer, you will actually activate both this. So when you get a DMA, the translated address bus and the actual address bus will be short-circuited together. And these also are confusing, and that is a lot on these schematics. These normally points to the direction of the signals, and there are some confusion about how these actually are connected together. So I was looking, and the translated address bus is actually only half the address bus, because that is from 8 to 15. The translated address bus is only the uppermost 8 bits. I thought, what's the deal with this one? But then I read into the data sheet of the 8722 memory management unit. And here they say that the TA and T15 actually are provided by the management unit, and that they are 3-stated for VIC cycles during AEC, and that they provide translated physical addresses for use with the multiplexed address bus. So they are just not a copy of each other. So it makes sense that the TA12 and A12 is different. They are not the same. So that got me confused. I thought this was just a buffered version of the same. So when I got some differences on the A12 bus and the T812, I didn't know where the origin for this was. And you also have the same buffer down here. It's actually two ships. And it's also U55, that is a 245 ships that actually can go both ways. And here you have the lower bits, A0 to A7. They actually is the shared address bus. So the shared address bus is not from bit 8 to 15. So together, the shared address bus and the multiplex address bus makes up 15 address lines, and these are provided up here to the cartridge port and so on. Also here you have the arrows that is pointing one way, but of course this is confusing. It is very confusing in this regard, because when the shared address bus actually is made, then it's the A address bus, the A0 to A7, that is actually transparent out it, and this arrow should have been the other way or both ways. So lot of confusion there. And this got me stuck for several days. So it's not always good to just take the aerial view and think that you have got understanding for something. And what got me thinking about this was this part of the schematics, because here I used some colors to insulate the different address buses, and then I discovered this U55 that was doing the magic and trickery with the shared address bus. And here I saw that we had the shared address bus, and it also got me pointed to another data bus that is the video memory address bus. And in some cases they have some shared bits, and in some cases they are not shared, because it goes of course to the memory for the video chip. It also goes to the character ROM and so on, but both the character ROM and the video memory is also addressable and writable to the original data bus and uses the shared address bus. So there are some confusion here about how this works, but in the end I was able to figure out most of it. And that actually got me towards this schematics and what is wrong. And this is the difference between a normal 128 and a DCR. I was measuring some stuff, and I actually found out that you don't have the ROM 2. It's not used on DCR. The ROM 4 is not used. So when I was starting to measuring control signals and measuring everything, this got me confused for a while. But in the end, I dig deeper into the schematics and saw that these four EEPROMs here are actually combined in these two here, and that is a part of the cost reduction. The U36, the extra function ROM, is the same and connected likewise on both. And I started out to measure out that every signal and everything was alright around this, and I couldn't find a fault to begin with. But then I discovered this, that the T812 was not the same as A12. So when I was measuring and got some signals on A12 here, A12 here, and I had some signals on A12 on some of the bus, this one actually was stuck high. So as I started to dig into this, I saw that this always was high. There was nothing happening on this whatsoever. And that meant that some of the kernel would never come into play, so the machine was not doing a normal startup routine. And I started to dig in what happened, which addresses was not addressed when you didn't have this. But of course, you always misses the startup vectors, so the BIOS does not know where to start. But when I measured T812 on the 244 chip and on the MMU chip, and also on the 250, the multiplexer chips for the video memory bus, I also had a lot of pulses. They didn't always look like this. Sometimes they was a bit more square, but that is probably due to me measuring with low quality probes. So there has to be a fault somewhere, and in this case I identified fault number 1. This is the Arctic Retro computer that has this fault. So this is the first fault on the Arctic Retro board. There is actually a break somewhere between this T812 and this T812. So that's the first fault of the 128 DCR board for Arctic Retro. This is the board from Arctic Retro, and I do have an idea what is the fault with this board, and actually most of it seems fine, but I do think that there is at least one, maybe 2 or 3 signals here that is not coming as it should. And we do have some of the address lines for these here. This is not addressing as it should. When I'm measuring on this and I'm watching this, I do find some problems with the A12 line on this. I do think it should be not the same as the A12 line on this, and I started out now with measuring signals on these, but what I've been doing, for 1.5 days, I've been taking every lead here and using the ohmmeter, just measuring out really these that should have the same address scheme, and seeing if there are some connections missing. And then I've took the address line from over here, and I've addressed the same lines on the Z80 or the 8502 CPU. And there are some translation of the address lines, and that is what I'm now going to look into, because on every one of these, the A0 to A11, everything should be the same among these. This one has the A14 and A15 lines swapped, and these have everything from A0 to A14 straight in. But this has some trickery on address line 12 and on address line 13. And there is a OR gate U61 that is translating the A13 on this to the TA14 and to the A13, and I do think that is working as it should, but I'm not measuring out right on the TA12 that should go to address line 12 on this. And I've mixed now with ohming and checking every line, and this is quite a tedious work. And luckily this 128, you can rule out everything that is on the drive side that is independent of this. It's only these 3 ICs that we had, this one, and this one, that actually interface between these boards. There's also a clock signal, but nothing more. And I do also have one more thing that I find suspicious, and that is the signals I'm getting, or the lack of signals I'm getting on the video card. And I do have one more issue here, and that is the signals that I'm getting on the lower data bits on the WIC chip. Because the lower data bits on the WIC chip, they are connected via this 4066 to the data bits on this 4-bit memory chip. This is the exact same arrangement as on C64. And I've also noticed, I've not checked this, the 4066 can be a bit hard to check, because this is a digital switch, and in some cases it works just fine if you test it, but the resistance is too big. But when I took this out of the socket, I saw that this is not replaced chip. Tommy has taken them out and he has tested them, the 4066. So there are some strangeness here, and these chips, from my experience, don't survive to be desoldered. This is CMOS chips. They are not immune to static noise the same way as TTL chips. Of course, the TTL chips is not immune to this either, but the 4000 series of CMOS chips, it's highly allergic to noise. And when I say noise here, I kind of misspoke, because I mean static electricity and not static noise. Because noise and static electricity can be the same, but in this case, this chip is not the best high quality stuff. It's not the CMOS of today, so it doesn't stand heat very well, and it doesn't stand static electricity very well. So it's often a source for errors. We do have some things to test out, and the first thing I'm going to do here is, before I attempt any repairs, I will check out this address line on the EEPROM here. And this actually is the TA12, and it goes to pin 2. And you can see it not connected to the other ones. But TA2 should be connected to one of these chips the multiplexers up here. So I will check which one of them it is, just to take a glimpse in the schematic and see that TA12 is pin 14 on U14. So that means 14, this is a 16, so it's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and I get nada. And we can see the TA12 is also connected to TA12. It's connected to the MMU on pin 6 and nada. And if I take here 16, 15, 14, this is connected. Okay, so there is a break somewhere between here and there. Yes, that's one fault down. Yeah, and I'm just going to solder in a temporary fix here. I might find out afterwards where on the board the fault actually are. It's usually in some via or some point, and if you have been soldering and working on the board, it's probably some hairline break somewhere. But I just solder in one lead from the 257 multiplexer and to the EEPROM. This lead here has silicone coating, and it's not very easy to short anything, but of course when I put this the other way around again and when there are some pressure, this of course can be punctured by one of the legs or something can penetrate the cable, but I take that risk. It's TTL level signals anyway, and then we are ready to test this board, and I'm just trying to connect this to my video grabber device. Even though it has these terrible colors and stuff, it did display a picture at least. Yeah, and this is my specially made 128 power supply. It's made from a desktop power supply with an additional 12 volt inject, so that I also can power an internal CD-ROM floppy device. Yeah, I will now try to power this on. I don't have very high hopes, but because I do believe that we at least have one more fault on this board. But look at that! It was blinking with some stripes, but I can see the capturing device did not make out these. I will try again and see if I can single frame and see if I can get one screenshot of this message on the screen. Yeah, I think I will ditch the video grabber for the rest of this video, because you can see here, this is actually what I got, and this is a single frame. But when I connect this video to the monitor, then I get this picture but with some changing signs. So it's clearly something wrong with this capturing device, so that's a no-go from now. Yeah, but now I have tried to turn this on and off several times, and this is actually what I got. And that means that I have a more stable fault now, so I am able to continue with the fault finding now. At least I know the 6502 series CPU is booting, that this is not left in some set80 void at startup. I can just take a quick test. I do have two 4066 here, and this one is the one that goes to the analog ports on the joystick. Of course, both can be bad, but I at least gamble that this one is bad. And try this. I can get a new 4066 and plug in as the next test. And plug in. Yes, some success at last. At least we get a picture. I do wonder if it's the turning drive situation that makes this cursor disappear and not be able to show itself. We have to see on that, because this is the same symptom I had on the other. Yeah, but just plug in the diag cartridge and see what happens then, to see if the rest of the system is alive and that if we have some unknown faults on this. This is the same diagram that we used last on the other DCR, so at least we know that it's working and is able to also test memory, even though it doesn't give us the right result. Yeah, and here we can see the 785260 diag is booting and it's starting its test. I'm going to fast forward through some of these tests because we don't need to see them in real time. Yeah, and here I give myself a real surprise. I've been itching to try this reset button, and of course I do it in the middle of the test, so the test will start all over again. You can see here there is one green mark around the red fence that is surrounding this information page on the bottom. So straight beside the 8502 U6 there is a green field, and it's actually the same on the other 128 DCR, and it also was the same on my machine. So this is probably some fault or some feature or whatnot on this diagnostic cartridge. And of course here we got the same fault as we usually do, the 6526s and so on, and also the interrupt and stuff. And there is no SID in this machine, so there is no point in continuing with these tests. And of course I don't have a 128 adapted harness yet. Yeah, and this is about where we will end this video. I do have to make some more tests. We do have to check the stability, and I do have to check the EIC bus and so on this machine. And probably I'm going to look into and adapt a test harness to also be able to test all the ports and stuff. But that has to be for my next episode. So at least this board is out of the woods, as they would see, and it's kind of stable now. So we have identified 2 faults. It was some, hard to find faults, and I have really struggled with this to get into the jargon of the 128. It's not easy task to get into the head of someone who has made a machine that is so special as this. So hope to see you in my next video. Hope you have liked the contents of this one, and hope also that you go back and see some of my older videos. I really need the viewer time. I need about 500 more hours to get membership with YouTube. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you in my next one.